Hi, everybody. Hopefully you can hear me. We're so excited to have you all back with us. Again, sorry we had to cancel last week. We just kind of bunch of stuff came up for all four of us actually, and we are just like, this isn't going to happen. But we're super excited to kind of revisit this topic, which we had an event on, which I think a couple of you were able to attend in November. We had a slightly different title for that one, but this is Wines of Grapes and Glory, Wines of the Panhellenic Games. And just a couple words of introduction. This was a topic we'd been tossing around for several years since the genesis of the project, and kind of going back to Dana and my days teaching Greek mythology at UC Berkeley, and just really loving this whole idea. Dana taught ancient athletics a couple times too, which I guess is a little bit more on point than even the mythology, but we had a lot of fun with that event in the fall, and we thought we actually had quite a few people asking for write-ups for it, and we didn't have write-ups for it. We just had a sort of live content version. So the first thing I want to do is refer you, if you're interested in kind of exploring this in a little bit more detail than we're going to do tonight. We do have that recording on our YouTube channel, so you can go through there and actually and fact check all our mistakes there on the recording. But we also with this one, we decided we just wanted to do it again for the club for the write-ups, but also a chance to get 3 more wines because the wines are so cool that we worked with before. So we have pretty much the same kind of content. We're not going to go too deep into the history, the mythology, the archaeology tonight. We're mostly going to focus on the wines, but we have three new wines for you as well. So kind of the usual format. If you have any questions, you can maybe throw them in the chat or kind of hold to the end, and we can spend some time. We just have the 3 no special offer wines, so we should have plenty of time to kind of get to everybody's questions. Yeah, do you guys have anything to add there? And
I think you summed it up. I'd say, okay. Yeah, if you got questions, you're part of the other event. And just kind of a heads up, some of you might be aware, these sites that we're going to be looking at, which center around these 4 Panhellenic sites, where these festivals that the ancient Greek world would come together at. We're going to be visiting those sites in March, laying the groundwork for an upcoming Ancient Wine Guys tour of Greece. So that's really, really exciting, and we're going to keep you guys posted from the field, and we'll be able to report back on our findings there. But so this topic, as Jeff was saying, is near and dear to our hearts, and something that we really are looking forward to sharing with you, both in terms of the wine and in terms of actually maybe being out at these sites. So.
Yeah, and what Dana didn't tell you is you're required to participate in the event, so you might time to start for that. Yeah. Okay.
Cool.
All right, let's. So we wanted to, before we kind of kick in here, we wanted to show you a map. I mean, most of you, I'm sure, are familiar with the general geography of Greece, but these 4 sites that we're focusing on are in order. Well, we go into much more detail on the sort of order of when these take place in the calendar 4-year cycles in the other recording. But we have Isthmia, which is very near to Corinth, on the Isthmus of Corinth there, and Nemea, which is kind of in the central Peloponnese, Olympia, west side of the Peloponnese, and then Delphi, which is on the northern side there in mainland Greece. So we'll be coming back to this map throughout the presentation a few times, so it just gives you a general familiarity with it. So the first wine we have tonight is 2019 Santor Roditis Nature from the Peloponnese. This is actually from near Patras, which is, if we go back to the map here, kind of north of Olympia, if you're going around the peninsula here, just up here, kind of here. So it was a wine that we were incredibly excited to introduce to you. Ryan and actually did a kind of I know we bought this on spec last fall, just because we were working out of a catalog, and I had this wine in New York City a couple years ago, and I was just like blown away by how cool and interesting it was. So it was in the same catalog, so we were able to get a really good price on it. Tried it in the fall, and like, all right, we have to put this in the club, and it's really close to Olympia, connected with that. So this wine is actually the wine producer is the first one in Greece, I believe, to receive a Demeter certification for wine, which is the gold standard of biodynamic agriculture in general, but also applies to viticulture. So the wine is 100% Rhoditis, which is interestingly, it's a kind of a light pink skinned grape, like you see it normally in white wines, but same thing with Pinot Gris, right, which we associate often with white wine, but is in fact has a tint, and this grape, I understand, actually comes in quite a few different shades of pink and red, even like light red. It's got a quite a wide range, and you see this grape often used in Retsina along with Savatiano. It's one of the main blending grapes for Retsina. So we talked about this in our previous presentation, but Retsina, is not normally the kind of wine you associate with fine wine. But the grape is grown on its own. It's really a naturally high acid wine, which is really cool. Does well growing on at some elevation. It preserves the acidity, so it's usually grown on north facing slopes in Greece when it has, when it's being grown to express the variety characteristics, not sort of blended. It's grown. There's a ton of it be grown on flat land, just the stuff that's being pumped into the Retsina. But kind of fine wine like this, you're going to see it grown. I think this one's at like 500 meters, 500 or 600 meters of elevation. And so I mentioned the wine grower. It's a completely biodynamic winery. So the wine is, the winery is completely kind of a whole ecosystem where there are all kinds of other crops growing in the vineyard. Everything is, completely natural. We were reading up on it. It's supposed to be one of the most just interesting vineyards to look at because there's so much going on in the vineyard there. Not just wine growing and grapes. So we're super excited. We're going to try to put this one on the list when we're over there. Maybe if we can visit, it looks good. We'll be able to bring you there as well. So this wine is aged completely natural yeast. It's naturally fermented in stainless steel and then actually aged. I think it's 18 months in stainless as well. And it's there's no oak on it. So if you're kind of on this, you're like wondering what that is, that kind of oaky, buttery, brioche, kind of rich bodied smell, that's actually from malolactic fermentation. So it's the same process that not most, I don't know, Ryan would know the stats on this better, but Chardonnay and Burgundy, for example, and of course Chardonnay in California goes through malolactic fermentation, which is just converting the really sharp malic acid to the more buttery lactic acid. And it works really well with this wine, I think, because of its really, really high acidity. So it softens that out a little bit, but you still get this like amazing kind of round, full, beautiful wine with good acid. So yeah, what are you guys kind of tasting on this wine, smelling and tasting?
Yeah, I think for me, like the palate, like you said, has that nice tension between a wine that has a lot of acidity, but also has some like silky kind of like sort of softer, almost like not oily, but like there's kind of like a softness to the texture. Yeah. Even though Rhoditis is a grape that is really more of a, it's a bright. Actually, it's a bright grape that also sometimes is maybe slight pejoratively described as like neutral, same as Pinot Gris you mentioned, and also Savatiano, the other grape that goes into Greek Retsina. So you kind of want neutral grapes if you're adding lots of stuff. Like Retsina, same as with Palomino in sherry in Spain. It's a very kind of neutral, quote unquote, white grape that is the base for that wine in particular. But in this case here, I think the farming and just the care in the vineyard that you see kind of bringing out some like that energy, that like liveliness that remains even after malolactic. Which again, you're totally right, Jeff. Like most whites do not go through it. You see it in some other winemakers doing like with Sauvignon Blanc in Napa. You see it sometimes. Like you see it with certain varieties, but yeah, I think it really actually helps to bring this wine to like a really more mature place and more complete.
Totally, totally. I taste this and I'm like, oh, this is what I want California wine to taste like. With the acidity, and we talk about biodynamic wines. We've had some in the past too. I think this is a perfect expression of, we're not going to necessarily believe that burying a horn in the corner of the vineyard or, root days and stem days are really going to be, the thing. But it is that extra care you were just talking about, right? That comes to bear and creates a really clean, beautiful wine. Unlike really any other white wine that I've had from Greece. I'm trying to think of some others that we might have had at different times.
Like certain Assyrticos have kind of had some of this sort of like that fuller, sort of like silky texture with that mineral-y. I mean, I wouldn't call this wine as like having like a strong like mineral backbone, but there's definitely like that energy on the back palate for me. And it's like Assyrtiko can sometimes get there. I mean, there's like we had that Malaguzia from Zafirakis that had that same sort of like, but that was a little more floral and citrusy, I would say. But yeah, it's a really unique wine. Like Jeff mentioned, like when I first had this wine, I was like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. And also, I mean, I think we were actually originally looking at like some of the higher end wines from the winery, and we settled on this one. Like this wine was actually like kind of the showstopper.
It's true.
Yeah, I think this is if I recall correctly, I think this is the winemaker's favorite wine actually of the whole set that they make. They have an amphora aged one as well of this same variety, which we haven't tried yet, but I definitely want to. And then really cool wine that we tried when I was out there last November was the Santa Mariano. So the name of the village is Santa Mari, I think it's called, and there's a variety there which is only in one vineyard in the world, and this winemaker is the only one who makes it, called Santa Mariano. So that's an interesting wine. We thought that wine was really, really cool, but preferred this one as well to that wine. But it's a really cool one. So if you're interested in trying that or any of the other wines from this winery, definitely let us know, because we're going to be buying more of it for definitely for personal consumption. It's just one of those. I mean, it's hard to say enough things about this wine. It's just the price is amazing, the quality of the wine is amazing, the story is amazing. It's really one of those wines we just kind of fell in love with and matched up with the story. We're like, let's definitely get this out to people. So yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah, I mean, I also really like the texture of it. I mean, it also makes you think there's a density to it, and it makes you think, I'm like, is there some skin contact here? You know, because it has that kind of skin contact feel that you would get out of an amber wine.
Yeah, not like full tannin, but
not
like
full tannins, but like
just like a little more like body, a little more texture. Yeah.
But like the softness on it, I mean, you can tell that there's concentration in the fruit too.
Yeah,
and maybe that suggests maybe older vines rather than younger vines.
And the
I think the wines are.
I
think these vines were. I have to look back. I think like 92 maybe something like that. So 30.
Yeah.
It's hard to imagine that 1992 was 30 years ago. When you hear that kind of date, you're like, oh, it's 30 years ago. It's a little scary, but yeah.
No, that is scary. Yeah.
But yeah, I think 1992. So yeah, medium old, vines for sure. So,
what would you guys pair this with? Jeff, you're over there in Hawaii. Is there you got any local fish options that that I should be aware of next time I show up on the islands?
Yeah, I mean, to me, it definitely is like a, what would you pair Chardonnay with? Like kind of a little bit of like a French Chardonnay that's got that same kind of, again, talking about price, but I mean the kind of wines that I immediately come to wine for me, the wines that immediately come to mind for me are kind of $30-$35, like a Premier Cru Chablis above, even more than that, or like a Burgundy Chardonnay for $35-$40 that kind of has that same, that's going to stand up to your meal in the same way, which again just kind of the value proposition there. Definitely, I think just a little bit of an oilier fish would be that kind of first thing that comes to mind to me. I know don't really eat a lot of fried chicken, but that would work as well. That kind of that sort of thing.
I think I'd go fried too. Or baked, but like you were saying, but I think a fried halloumi salad
Yeah.
with like lots of olive oil,
Yeah.
and spinach maybe, and some like
I was
You know,
thinking
that's, yeah,
lemon.
yeah. For me, it was salty cheeses.
Yeah.
totally.
Yeah.
I was thinking
Yeah.
feta. I was thinking
Yeah.
like a farro salad with feta,
Yeah.
halloumi, something like that. Yeah,
Yeah.
but I think you're on point there.
And fish definitely. I mean, this would kill any fish here.
Well, the good news is we're gonna be able to test out all of these recipes perhaps on site. We can tell you what works best. So
Well, should we move on to the next wine there, Jeff?
yeah, let's do it.
All right. Tito, you want to grab this one?
Yeah. So this is the 2021 Chetramitos Aguritico. So it's from the Peloponnese. It's from actually the northwest corner, north of Olympia, near Mount Aronia. And it's grown at a pretty high elevation, 1,000 meters. And it's not too far from the ocean, so it gets that nice diurnal shift that we talked about. Classic Mediterranean climate, cool nights, warm days. This is like the Santor. This is also a biodynamic wine. And so, obviously organic viticulture is it's the first step before you even get to biodynamic. And a lot of people, when they're farming biodynamic, like certain practices they take more seriously than others. Here, they only pick their whites and press their whites on flower days, and they only pick the reds on fruit days. So as you can see, that could, some winemakers will just pick based on ripeness levels, right? Sugar levels. Or availability of workers, right? But here, they do a combination of looking at those sugar levels, but also basing it on the day as well. And some winemakers take it to another level where they will get their own bottling or hiring a bottling line to come because they only want to bottle their biodynamic wines. On a fruit or
according to the calendar.
Or a flower day.
You know what's funny about biodynamic calendar? And again, like we've talked about biodynamics a lot. I don't think none of us would claim to be experts on biodynamics by any means, but it is something that we see come up a lot in terms of kind of like debates about what it is, what does it actually have as an effect on wines. I think a lot of times, like what Dana just kind of mentioned, is like that care in the vineyard is sort of there. Like, you're spending more time in the vineyard, regardless of what you're doing there. You're in the vineyard doing more work. You're more attentive to the needs. Is kind of the general idea. And I think like that's maybe the more kind of like the optimistic but skeptical take on biodynamics would be that someone's out in the vineyard, they're going to be looking for problems. They're going to be, how do I address this holistically? And if it doesn't work, then obviously they're going to try something. They'll keep trying other things. But yeah, one funny thing about the calendars is like I've seen many different biodynamic calendars, and so depending on whose calendar you follow, one day could be a fruit day and one day could be a root day. So when you get two biodynamic winemakers into a room and they're arguing about like why a wine tastes a certain way, I've literally seen two separate calendars come out of the pocket and say, no, it's a fruit day, and say, no, it's a root day, or it's a leaf day, or something like that. And they're both trying to justify why it tastes a certain way. So there's some subjectivity there. Yeah.
I often think of it. I think it was what's that story with? I think it might be Van Halen on their touring schedule, where they were notorious for like saying, "Hey, we want a bowl of M&Ms with all the green M&Ms taken out of it."
Yes.
And people are like, "Oh my God! Like, why are they? They're crazy. Why do they want to do this?" And during the interview, they were asking, "Well, hey, what's up with the M&M thing?" And it was like, well, no, there's a very good reason for that. It sounds ridiculous, but it's about details. It's about paying attention. And if we come in and we find that detail, which was on this contract, is not checked, we know now we got to go back and check everything else. So, hanging the structure.
In Van Halen's case, I think that anecdote came from the fact that they had like pyrotechnics at their shows.
Yeah.
And so this was the era, the 80s when pyrotechnic accidents were happening because it was all the rage. And so, that was, I think, where they, in their rider, in their contract, it was like, hey, people are like, oh, it's, they're just being prima donnas. Like, no, it's actually, like you said, it's about details, and it's about that, it's the little things that can make a big difference. And I think, when people look at what biodynamic preparations are, sometimes you get these, when you look at them, sometimes you're like, how is that going to actually do anything? But there's more and more understanding of certain aspects of it. I'm more biodynamic producers I talk to, they say, look, I don't do all of the preparations. I do the parts that I think make sense. So I think that's probably where, you're going to
for example, I'm going to use, oil, citrus oils and stuff to stop mealy bugs and other things, rather than, okay, I'm going to throw like Roundup, and kill in order to kill weeds.
Basic rules, basic structure. It's like religion, baby, right?
Yeah.
You could be a zealot, or you can make it your own, but it's giving you a little bit of structure to guide you in the right direction.
So back to the wine. Sorry,
no problem. No problem. So this is also grown on limestone soils as well. So I know we talked about soil types before. If you guys remember our wines of the Pharaohs.
Minerals and monuments.
Minerals and monuments. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so limestone soils, it's going to give a wine a little bit more lift and a little bit more brightness. So this is 100% Agavitico. It's the most widely planted red grape in Greece, and it can take, if it's not at high elevation, it can get a little bit more burly, a little bit riper. A lot of times you'll see it blended with international varieties like Cabernet Sauvignon or Syrah, and aged in oak. This one is 100% Agavitico, and it's aged in just pure stainless steel tanks, and it'll give you that really bright note to it, which I really like. I mean, for me, it's a little bit. It doesn't go through carbonic, but it gives it that that kind of Beaujolais-ish feel to it, and that's what we love about it.
It's really like a fresh take on Agavitico. Like again, like T's saying, it's a grape that sometimes you taste these wines and they're just kind of like. They're just like dark and kind of burly is a great term, like kind of dark, burly, and angry, and they're not always super pleasant to drink. They can be very rustic, and even with age, they still don't show that well. And this style, I think,
like a lot of people I'm related to actually. Now that we're talking about this, it's interesting. Yeah.
It's Greek, not Sicilian.
Well,
but but I think the Beaujolais call is like really spot on. There is this kind of like juice. Freshness and kind of there's a little like bit of structure of tannin, but it shows all that kind of like bright like blueberry bouncy fruit that I really would expect from something like that. Really nicely crafted wine. It's young, but
it's young, and this is a wine that not meant to age, serve it slightly chilled. I think of like a nice summer evening, or spring evening.
But it's complex.
It's complex.
It's not just because it's not something you would necessarily stick in the cellar for 4, 5, 6 years. Doesn't mean it doesn't have complexity. I think that for me there is a lot of those kind of like violets and blueberries and boysenberry kind of stuff that is really it keeps your nose in the glass for sure.
I really see this in so many different settings, right? Like summer day, something fresh, bright, but also holidays or something like that. I mean, I could have this with turkey. I could have this with it's lovely. I think it's
it's very approachable. I mean we use that term a lot. I think it's it's a little bit of like one of those kind of cop out terms, but in this case I feel like when I say approachable, I would have no reservations pouring this for anybody who's like, hey, can I have a glass of red? Which that's kind of a very baseline sort of thing, but I would trust it to show well to both the wine educated and the wine uneducated people who are kind of getting into wine, out of wine, not out of wine, but long in wine, I should say. I really like its place. I mean, I like that it's it's also kind of like a new style, new school, if you will, for Greek Agavitico.
New classics. Yeah, totally. Also, interestingly, birthplace of the Helvetica font. That's a lie. I just made that up.
And what's interesting about both the Sator and the Tetramitos, Agavitico Nature, is that both of these are considered. You could consider them natural wine.
Absolutely.
They're not. But they're not in. A lot of times nowadays, especially on the coast, when people say natural wine, people think of funky wines. But both of these wines would qualify as natural wines, but they're made they're pretty clean.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean,
yeah.
that's good. It's always a good aside. I feel like we touch on this a lot, frequently, but natural wine is it's one of those terms that it doesn't always mean that the wine is gonna taste like kombucha and look like a snow globe when you pick up the bottle. Like it doesn't have to have that connotation.
Exactly.
These are wines that are made really, really immaculately in the vineyard and in the cellar as well, where you don't have to have any bacterial or wild yeast flaws or something like that coming through. I mean, I say flaws in quotes, right? Some people love it. So, but it's a wine that would impress all generations of wine drinkers.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Did you guys have any? Did you come across an explanation for the ETA there on the epsilon on the label?
I looked actually. I did not.
I did.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of liked it because there's a comma after it too, which makes me think it's like someone didn't copy edit it, but I'm almost there's got to be some meaning there.
Yeah.
Is it falling off the nature to make it nature? Like nature versus nature.
I mean, I think that's
Yeah.
I like the label. I think it's
Striking.
cool.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah.
So we have 2 wines with nature in the label.
And actually, this is from the village of, I think, Calavrita, and there is a variety there called Calavrita Nera, I think, Mavro, Calavrita Mavro, Mavro Calavrita, made by this winery that is they're one of the only makers of that grape as well. So very similar to the Santor. It's kind of like a funny parallel. Both the wines are named the same. And there's another variety that's like basically a monopole.
We're adding this to the list. I think we're going to have
Oh,
to
yeah.
add these to the
We might have
stocks.
to stop by.
Definitely,
This trip is about visiting sites, not just wineries.
I've been misled. I gotta learn stuff too.
Jeff wasn't lying. We are going to actually run some of these events, and those of you who remember the stadia, each of these Panhellenic sites actually has one. So I see some foot racing happening. I don't know about the naked part, but I think the foot racing will happen.
Depends how many wineries it hits.
That's a good point. Yeah, if it's early in the day or at the end of the
There
day.
might be some wrestling involved.
Over the keys, right?
Yeah. Watch your local news. I guess that's the
You can win that gold medal. I'm good.
You wear Stephanos.
I'd like to not be thrown out of Greece. Yeah. See if they ever let us back.
Yeah, the point is to come back. That's true.
Well,
Get it out of our system.
Well, should we jump to the third wine here, Jeff?
Hey
Sure.
guys, quick question. And this is
Hey,
related to what you were talking about with biodynamic before. I know the biodynamic days, root day, etc., are more sort of, I don't know, astrology than astronomy, if you will. But
Yes.
what is, and I've vaguely heard that the rationale is something to do with moon cycles or something like that. But what is the explanation that's given for those days?
Oh, so it does have to do with moon cycles. Again, I will restate my disclaimer that I'm not an expert in biodynamics. It's not something that I mean, there's like entire institutes developed to it. There's you can get a degree in it from these institutes. It's like a big field of study. And then you can combine it with Japanese biodynamics. There's multiple schools now. So I won't claim to be able to answer this question. That's a great question. Fully, but it does have to do with the moon cycles. It does have to do it's like the calendar is different. It's not on based on the 365 day calendar, so it does rotate each year.
I think planets also have influence, and that's why you have different arguments about different days, right? Because otherwise, if you're just on the lunar calendar, or if it's just on moon cycle, then there's not much to argue about.
Right.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I've literally heard biodynamic winemakers be talking straight faced, no joking about it, no undertone of irony, talking about okay, well, Jupiter's doing this, Saturn's doing this, Mercury's here, so it literally I've heard those types of conversations. So planets, celestial bodies, these types of things.
But moon is the most important. Like
Moon is the most important. Yeah.
Yeah.
But no, unfortunately, we don't have a better answer for you there, Venkat. It's not our specialty. And again, like we kind of I'm speaking for us here, but
yeah.
we kind of maintain like a sort of neutral stance on it, where it's like we like a lot of wines that are made biodynamic. We're not going to say don't do it. I'm not gonna ever try to discourage somebody if they want to do it.
And we're all about ritual, and we're all about tradition, obviously. And some of those rituals and traditions, I think some of them have actually been drawn from practices that, at least there have been claims that have made that some of them go back to agricultural practices in ancient Rome. I haven't looked closely enough into it to really sort of verify whether those claims are true. Like I've heard that with the burying of the horn, filled with dung in the corner of the vineyard. But that's a good avenue to kind of explore a little bit more and take a look into. So good question. Yeah.
So, and just quick note on that particular aspect, the burying of the horn filled with dung.
Mhm.
So I've actually seen this done, and you bury it in the winter, and you dig it up in the spring or spring or summer, if I remember correctly. But you bury a bunch of them, like a lot of them, and you pack it full of this almost like it's essentially like dung, but it's mixed with local herbs and local soil from the vineyard. So the goal there is you're kind of like burying and like processing kind of like what they call this almost like a microbial kind of like a starter, like a Kickstarter. So you take all this stuff that you dig it up out in the spring and the summer, and you use all that material that's basically been sitting under the earth and kind of like absorbing, essentially just kind of, I don't know, not fermenting, but developing. And then you basically spread that in the vineyard as they say it's almost kind of like like an energy shot, sort of thing.
Yeah.
You get like a shot of vitamin B12 or something like that. It's small, but it affects your body.
So you're actually preparing surface topsoil over time.
Exactly.
And
And so you take the material, the dung that's been in those horns, and you spread that like in the vineyard, like near the vines. So it does like proliferate out in the vines.
Mm-hmm.
The actual efficacy of that, I think, is does it actually make a difference? It's the same question about like, do the vines actually like suck up minerals from the soil?
Right.
Like, well, yes, but does that get in the wine? No. I mean,
We're
these sorts of
terroir
things.
territory.
We're in terroir territory in some ways, but it's a lot of winemakers will say that it's healthy for the soil to bring microbial and fungal life back to the soil, especially when a soil has been like heavily conventionally farmed. There's been a lot of chemical use for like 10, 20, for generations or something like that. And then you buy a vineyard and you spend 3, 4, 5 years rejuvenating that vineyard, trying to get the soil alive again, got more carbon and more like just basic life in the soil. They'll do biodynamic preparations like this because it's kind of a Kickstarter. So that's just an aside, just because we've mentioned that kind of the burying the horns thing. There's other preparations in the 500 series preparations, which is part of the main preparations you do, that are like, they're much more ritualistic.
A little more ritualistic.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And even the bearing of the horns, you bury it in different parts of the vineyard, and there's like a ritual behind it. It's also a sign of passing of the seasons as well.
Yeah. But it's something that we'll definitely continue to learn more on. But we don't claim to be experts on it. But
Thanks.
Totally. Unless there's any other questions, we move on to the wine number 3. This is the 2019 Ippolito Liber Pater. This is a Ciro Rosso is the appellation, and it's 100% Galliopo from Calabria, Italy. So for those of us who enjoy geography, that is the shin or instep, if you will, of the boot of Italy, down in southern Italy. And so this is a wine that is again, Ciro Rosso. The appellation here is 100% Galliopo. You can actually blend in, I think, technically like a couple percent of some of the local white grapes, which would be Trebbiano and Greco Bianco. But in this case, this is a pretty straightforward example of the style. You have some nice kind of medium body, a lot of red fruits. And this is aged for about 8 months in French oak. And I would say this is like a nice kind of like humble expression of Ciro. They can get much bigger than this. They can be dark and really spicy and savory. About 10, 15 years ago, a lot of them were kind of very simple. I think it's an appellation that has gotten a lot better in the last 10-ish or so years. And this is corroborated by some of the other folks who have been tasting along in the last generation or so. But it's just like a great great value, kind of like table red, one of the classic table reds of Italy. Galliopo is a grape that is an ancient variety. The roots of it probably go back thousands of years, but the first kind of written descriptions of it go back to right around the 13th century. Very, very likely that it is the DNA profiling shows that it's a cross of Sangiovese and some other grape, like one of 10 different other grapes. They don't know who that other parent is. We'll have to find out on Jerry Springer. Like, it's one of those sort of things. Yeah. But the style, I would say, is kind of similar, where it has that kind of like, bright core of acidity to it, with these kind of like violets and floral tones and all these kind of really pretty sort of pretty classic Galliopo elements of of spices and earth and undertones like that. Mm-hmm. Just a little bit about the naming of the wine here. Liber Pater is also a name for Bacchus, the Roman god of wine, so pretty aptly named there. And Ippolito is actually one of the oldest continuous producing wineries in the Chiro appellation. So they've been around for about 170 years, which as a continuous producer is pretty impressive there. Stylistically, though, I would say this is like, I wouldn't put this in the natural wine camp, so to speak. I would just put this in kind of in a more modern winemaking camp. And not to say that there's any pejorative there. There's nothing wrong with that. I would just say stylistically, in knowing how they're farming and how they're making the wine. This is again aged in just used French oak barrels, and it's a blend of two decently sized plots by the Ippolito family. But yeah, I mean, as far in the glass, like I was saying, a lot of kind of soft cherries, flowers, dried herbs. Very much like a great pizza pasta kind of wine, which is, again, that's always a little bit of a cop out where you're like, okay, yeah, everything goes with spaghetti, like that's fine. But yeah, I would do like a wild, little like a bit of a
wild boar pizza.
Well, yeah, you took the words out of my mouth.
Yeah,
I was gonna say sugo, but but pizza's pretty good too. But
we just had pizza actually.
Have you ever had a wild boar pizza?
I have had wild boar sugo. No, not pizza.
Yeah, I was gonna say. You put pizza and wild boar. Did you mean those in the same place, or those were two separate things? Wild boar pizza.
Dana, have you had a wild boar pizza?
A wild boar pizza?
I don't know. You said wild boar. I think you meant to say wild boar pizza, and I heard wild boar pizza.
Wait, I'm still not hearing the difference. Hold on.
Well, I think you were listing two separate dishes, and I was understanding pizza with wild boar on top.
I was actually no, you're right. I was actually thinking of
like boar sausage.
Boar sausage because one time I have had wild boar. It was in like a saucisson sec, and it was really delicious, and gamey, and a lot of fat and like sinewy stuff. So I was imagining that on pizza.
Yeah,
not that
that's what I thought you said. I just wanted to clarify it.
Yeah, totally.
I know what we're doing as soon as we can find some wild boar.
I'm sure we can get it here. We have a lot of wild boar here, so.
That's true. That's a great point. Actually,
we had him chase us through the forest that one time, Jeff.
Yeah, that's actually a little. Yeah, we'll tell you that story another time. That was.
But the connection. I mean, it makes good sense. Like, pizza pasta. Like, you were saying Sangiovese. And I mean, definitely a lot of characteristics that are similar. Not that I think this was Chianti or something like that, but super approachable. This is the first time I've actually had Galliopo before. For those of you also who might be wondering, well, why are we in Italy now? Galliopo also was the wine that was, so this part of Italy, as you know, was also Greek colonies, and this wine was actually, and this grape particularly was given to Olympic victors who won the 4-year festival at Olympia. So good one to end on for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And
one of the things actually I was reading about in that area, there's a lot of grapes that were originally considered to be Greek transplants, but then they have later on and more recently kind of decided like, no, probably not so much. They are actually, the Galliopo in this case, originally Italian. For a long time it was believed to be of Greek origin. Same as
brought over by Greek
colonists. And the same with its white counterpart for Ciro Bianco, which is the grape Greco Bianco, which literally means white Greek.
White Greek, yeah.
But I believe through the DNA profiling efforts that they've done, they're really narrowing down like, okay, this is probably an Italian origin that had some connections to or similarities to certain Greek grapes that they were familiar with at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And and also the Greeks were the ones who first cultivated them. So even if they came there Right, they came over and then they were the ones who introduced grape growing in the sense of making wine out of the grapes. So in that case, it would be easy to mistake a grape for being Greek if they're the first ones to grow it. So
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's kind of about like who owns it, right? Like, okay, like if sure, if it was a Greek guy who sailed over there, 2,500 years ago and he planted it, and it's been in the on the Italian peninsula for 2,500 years. Is it still a Greek grape? Is it or has it become an entirely new thing? Is it an Italian grape now? Like, I mean, this again, I think we had a discussion maybe a couple times back about like Zinfandel and Primitivo and clones and cousins, all that sort of stuff. And I think there's a very like scientific and like a objective way of measuring it, and there's also kind of like, well, who's kind of claiming it at this point,
Right.
Yeah.
What kind of cultivation is taking place there during this process of rapid expansion, right? I mean, this isn't the Levant, right, where you have a nascent, original sort of wine culture that is cultivating grapes for grape growing. That said, there's some interesting stuff in France where, with the expansion of Rome, you actually did have preferred styles, and there's an interesting paper by Michael Dietler. Anyway, it's interesting to see that interplay we're talking about as we talk about the expansion of these empires, the sort of standardization of some of these wine styles, and then also the discovery of and that process of like interculturation, that process of sort of like taking and giving and changing and adapting is really fantastic to see culturally, but also right in the products of wine too. So.
Yeah, but the preferred style thing I think is always really fascinating. It's like you can read about, let's take like Champagne for example. Even going back a couple hundred years, or even going back 100 years, let's say, it was much sweeter in style. Champagne was much sweeter. It was bubbly, but it was still bubbly at that point, but it was much sweeter. You go back another 100 years, Champagne was a very different wine almost entirely. You had going back, let's say 300 years, just for the sake of discussion here, there was more of a style that we would call like Oeil de Perdrix, which is more like a light rosé or like a darker rosé, and it was like a very light red almost, or very like kind of like deep salmony color. Like that was the color that was expected from that region based on based on what it could grow, and it was famous for that. But so it was still Champagne. It was still wines from Champagne. So the popularity and the preferred style of wines that ended up really making Champagne what it is today. The czars of Russia were very fond of Champagne. They loved the sweeter champagnes, and so that kind of really kickstarted the proliferation of first of all the bubbly Champagne, really pushed to aside the still wines of Champagne. And then all of a sudden now today, no one hardly even knows that they make still wines in Champagne, and they're actually coming back in style. Just as an aside,
good. If you ever have a Bouzy Rouge,
Cote Champenois, Bouzy Rouge, they're fantastic wines. So looking at wines like this, we're drinking wines that we think, oh wow, this is like this ancient variety. It's like they could have been drinking them, as we know, sweetened with spices, honey, things like Retsina, all these sort of things that we talk about all the time. How preferences sort of shape the grape, and grapes shape the preferences.
Totally.
Yeah.
And when we see them crossing, I'm thinking also of our Herod the Great. One of the wines that we had also was from Italy, because Herod was famous for importing wines from outside of Palestine, where he was, and that kind of connoisseurship, that kind of attention, it's picking up those threads and seeing those changes, and then applying it to the examples that we experience today. Like your life. That's the fun part. And it's delicious too. So,
yeah, and if you're wondering, I mean, those of you, I don't know if you've all read the club write-up yet, but if you're kind of wondering, well, what's that picture in the background? That's an additional connection to the wine. That's Milo of Croton. Of course, we spent quite a bit of time discussing him.
Behind the text, you mean, Jeff?
What's that?
Behind the text?
Yeah, exactly. Kind of, I faded it out there, so we kind of faded, and I just noticed earlier that the Ancient Wine Guy's logo is sort of he's clutching as he dies. Being squeezed between the trees, the Ancient Wine Guy's logo is kind of funny. That's just a coincidence, but he's actually from originally Milo of Croton. He's from Croton, which is a city in Calabria. So that was another connection with that wine, in addition to the Gaglioppo being used there. So yeah, maybe that's why he was such a great Olympic victor, is because he grew up drinking a lot of Gaglioppo. I don't know. I don't know if anyone's argued this before, but could be.
I mean, I'm going for a run around the block after this. That's
Well, I think at this point that's all the wines we have for today. It's gonna be a little bit of a shorter one. Now, if there's any questions, we're open to answering any and all questions, any of those burning wine questions. We know you have them. Yeah, we don't have any bonus wines for this go around this time, but we will next time.
Yep. Yeah, so let's open up the floor. Anybody have any thoughts, or anybody tasting with us tonight? Want to share your notes or
any favorites of the bunch?
Yeah.
So I am tasting with you. I just wanted to mention there's a chef by the name of Bill Buford. He's American, and he went to Lyon, France, to learn how to cook French cooking. And his thesis of his book Dirt is that the Italians taught the French how to cook. So like French cuisine is actually Italian cuisine with a French flair. So I was really interested to hear you talking about, like, if it's a Greek grape and then it's been in Italy for 2,000 years, is it really still a Greek grape, or is it Italian? So kind of along the same lines, is French wine really like Greek or Italian, or is it French? Kind of the same kind of idea. This got him a lot of bad press, and people who like refuse to talk to him. The very idea that French cooking is actually Italian cuisine. But anyway.
Well, it comes up,
probably
that same idea comes up a lot, right? In archaeology and cultural patrimony, where you have, if you're in Turkey, you're obviously arguing that the monuments in Ephesus, or for example, are Turkish. But if you're Greek, you think, well, those are Greeks who built those in the time. And so it's always such a complicated issue. Or even, the Rosetta Stone is Macedonian Greeks who wrote this thing, but then it's in Egypt. And obviously, we're kind of trying our best to adhere to, where these things are in the more modern age, but these lines get blurred the farther back you go in history. It's super complicated and contentious for various reasons.
Right. This theory that French cuisine is actually Italian, and like the Italians taught the French how to do it, because it was all like rich Romans who moved to the Lyon area. That brought their cuisine with them, right? And back then French was all like peasants, and
it's funny because it's not just Rome, right? It continues through history, and I mean, there's a reason that Francois I was such a diehard for the Renaissance, and brought Da Vinci himself and buried him in Blois. I mean, I'm Sicilian, so you're not going to get an unbiased review out of me, Jim. I think
it's really interesting though that you guys are like kind of like identifying these things, and you have to sort of like be in between, right? Like you're kind of neutral, like the biodynamic, right? Like it is those guys say this thing, and But I'm eternally grateful to you guys for showing the Agiohetico wine that I like, because I didn't like any of the ones I tried when I went to the Peloponnese, and then somehow all of the ones you've sent me have been glorious. So thank you for that.
Oh, that's great.
Thanks, Jim. Cheers. High praise, Jim.
That's great. Yeah.
Means a lot to us. Yeah, cheers.
Hey guys, so quick question on some of the history here. I know you said that so Olympia and Delphi, I think, were the Panhellenic Games of more importance. Why is it sort of the Olympic Games whose legacy is still here today, as opposed to the Delphi Games or something else?
Yeah, Jeff, I can start on that one.
Go for it, Dan.
So with the resurrection of the Olympic Games, to the festival that we, or the event that we know today, Olympia did have some sense of primacy. You had Olympia and Delphi on these 4-year cycles, Isthmia and Nemea, actually twice a year. So, you always had a festival to go to. But Olympia did have primacy in the sense that it was the first of the 4 to be founded, and had this sense of Heracles himself, stepping out and creating the stadion, and it was dedicated to Zeus. So for that reason, it did enjoy, I think, even in antiquity, a sense of slightly higher stature than those at Delphi. Delphi was really oriented quite differently in terms of, and it changed over time as well. You had more artistic events, theatrical events. There was even a painting competition at one point at Delphi. Those things were kind of phased out, but music, all these other things that aren't part of the resurrected games that we celebrate today, were part of the the fabric there. So yeah, that's the short answer. And I think when they went to resurrect it, they thought, well, we're not going to do 4 of these festivals. We're going to focus on one, and Olympia was the one to do.
Makes
Sorry, there's
sense.
some kind of major something going on near my apartment here. If there's a bunch of sirens, I apologize for that. I was just
fine.
gonna
You're
add, yeah, Dana mentioned, but the year, 776, the very first year
Yeah.
of, I mean, the literally the calendar was calibrated around the Olympic Games, so it just had that prestige from the very beginning. Some of those other festivals weren't added until much later, so I think it 6th century. So it kind of had a big head start, as well as, like Dana mentioned, being dedicated to Zeus, kind of the prime. I think those few reasons, yeah. So I guess when they were looking back at it, it had, I don't know exactly the story. It'd be an interesting story to look into exactly how they made that decision. But I think just the Olympia always had the prestige because it was an Olympiad, was a 4-year cycle of time in Greece, ancient Greece. Right.
And I haven't seen anything in the literature to kind of posit, if you were to win an event at Olympia versus Delphi, that you would be receiving, for example, like less obscenea when you went back to your hometown, when Milo goes back to Croton and so forth. Certainly there was prestige to actually win in events at all 4 events, and you would, but yeah, no, it's an interesting question. Yeah, I think the fact that, again, the primacy of it, as Jeff was saying too, that kind of lent its name. If they're going to pick one, it would be Olympia.
It's kind of like tennis. It sounds like, how you have 4 Grand Slams.
Mm-hmm.
It's prestigious to win all 4, but like Wimbledon always gets
It gets the
bumps up.
I hadn't thought of that.
Wimbledon is like always considered
a little bit more.
a little bit
Yeah,
more
yeah.
like posh.
That's a perfect analogy.
Yeah,
I think that's a
yeah,
perfect analogy. Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
I like that a lot.
Not to go down the rabbit hole too far here, but
Peronodikes, that's the, if you win all 4. Peronodikes. I'm so sorry, Mike. That just jumped into my brain. Yeah.
I get it. But I'm wondering if when the Olympics were restarted, it was not archaeologists that drove what had primacy, but people, what they had learned in school or university. And maybe Olympus was a little more obvious, or not obvious, got more airplay, if you will, in the university.
Yeah, there certainly was a co-opting of the idea, and of course, right, the origins of the games have a lot to do with following following World War I, right? That it was actually founded.
It's a little more politically infused.
The idea of bringing, that Panhellenism, let's apply this to the rest of the world and create this sense of sporting. So the big things about so the Panhellenic truce, right? They really gripped into that idea that, that
war stops,
and this was a time to come together. However, actually, historically, it seems as though that wasn't so much the case.
No.
There are plenty of recorded wars that took place during, hostilities that continued and so forth. I think there was a general sort of pass that was given to folks that were traveling to the games. There was an agreement, even in hostility, that you could go there. But some of these ideas that we associate with the modern Olympics, like, for example, amateurism, right? Certainly not the case in ancient Greece, right? These were professional athletes who were training, and even amateurism today, I guess maybe it is actually quite similar, right? Our national Olympians that we send to the games are certainly training. There are rules about them being paid. They can't take endorsements, that sort of stuff.
Yeah, certain things.
But the idea of that amateurism and camaraderie is a little bit anathema to, I think, what the games became. Although there are plenty of people, like, say, in the city of Elis, who actually controlled the festivities at Olympia. There are lots of complaints and and citations of corruption. And so, maybe it's like FIFA, right? It's what's old is new again. People are people. And maybe we took a little too much from the Greeks in terms of our structures and traditions. But yeah.
So I'll jump back in again, not on that subject, but whenever we watch these live or recorded, we tend to have a meal with it and go off of you guys' food recommendations when you have them or whatever we figure out. So for whatever it's worth, halloumi went really well with the first 2 wines.
Fantastic.
So
Mike, how'd you prepare it?
We just grilled it in a cast iron pan, same one we used for the pork chops that we intended to have with the second one.
That's
And,
brilliant.
I will confess it's not Greek halloumi. It's from Milton Freewater down near Walla Walla there. But it went well with the first 2 and it was acceptable with the third one as well. So
Brilliant, Mike. That's
that
brilliant.
That's great.
Well,
You're making me hungry.
it sounds like boar pizza is the way to go on that third one. If I was paying attention to the presentation correctly.
I think I would like to try that actually.
Yeah.
We'll work on it. Yeah.
Definitely.
I did make a pseudo, I don't know how you pronounce it. Naduja or something.
Nduja.
Naduja. Okay, thank
Yeah.
you. And it went a lot better with the first red than the second red, but that may be just the version I made. So.
Mike, it sounds like the next time we're up north that we're going to have to check in and actually maybe verify some of this.
Stop by for dinner.
Yeah, I think we should probably.
We'd be totally up for that. So. Let us know when you're going to be here.
Just on the Nduja topic, if folks don't know, it's spelled Nduja, and it is a spreadable. Well, should we say like Calabrian spiced pork paste, pate, if you will.
Kind of salami-ish.
Pate, exactly.
In taste.
In taste, and then it's amazing stuff. If you can find it at an Italian market, it's you'll go through whatever vessel it comes in far faster time than you could possibly imagine. So it's something to look out for. Yeah.
And you'll be utterly shocked, but I don't think we can find it in Spokane. So.
I would be a little shocked. This went to a wonderful grocery store last time we were up there. So okay, challenge accepted, Mike.
Yeah,
we'll find it for you.
We'll find it for you.
All right,
Yeah,
that'd be
we'll
great.
send it out.
Otherwise, we'll go to Seattle next time. I think De Laurentiis will carry it, but yeah.
Oh yeah.
Gorgeous.
Very much around here.
Well,
The cat food, it comes in a cat food container, and it smells like cat food, and it tastes incredible.
great. Well, if there's any other questions, we'd love to answer. Otherwise, I think we might sign off there and wish everybody well.
Next time we see you, we'll be back from Greece, so we'll have some stories to tell, and we'll keep you guys posted in the meantime. So
likely will be April. I think realistically, I think is what we're looking at, like probably the first week of April. So it's going to be a little bit delayed again, just due to the fact that we're traveling. We're going to be gone from the 17th through the 26th, I think, that whole time period there. So we'll be we'll be kind of out of touch, but we'll still be there. We'll still be in touch in spirit. So.
Indeed.
Yeah, and let us know if you want to tack anything on from this particular event or anything from the last couple. We have quite, not a ton of stuff, but we have stock of pretty much everything we've worked with. So, or any of the, other Santor wines or anything like that. Let us know, because again, we are definitely going to be ordering some of those.
And also, if you come across something or you try something, put it on our radar. Let us know. If there's something you want us to look at, and that goes for topics too. There are ideas that you've got. This is a community, and we want to hear back from you guys as well. So, yeah.
Especially if it's pork related, spiced pork.
Yeah, exactly.
Red Bull Spice Park. That's right.
All right.
All right.
Yes, I have a really quick question, if you don't mind. The
Oh, sure.
first wine, the Ruditas. So I got, I think, a lot of the same notes as you guys at the beginning. I was mostly in sort of the lemon citrusy camp. I thought it was really salty, really great acidity. I really like this wine, and also that texture component. But now that it's been, and I just opened the bottle at the start of this class, so it's been maybe 20 minutes now, or sorry, it's been an hour now. So it's gotten this sort of gamey flavor. And I'm curious if you're getting that, if it's just me.
When you say gamey, you mean like on the yeah, maybe like give me a few more words there, like about gamey. Is there like a tangy quality to it? Is there like a more like oxidized quality? Is it a more like what speaks out to you there?
It's sort of, so I know this is an odd characteristic for a white wine, but it's sort of like that bacon-esque characteristic that you sort of get sometimes with Syrah, but much milder.
Like bacon
mixed with
fat?
Yeah, like bacon. Yeah, like if you smell the pan after you cook bacon, that bacon fatty note.
I think it's from the mallow. Yeah, it's from the mallow.
That can be from like that kind of like post cooked bacon sort of smell. That can definitely come from the mallow for sure. Yep. Mallow, yeah. And also, I appreciate this is also a pork related question, so nice. Good segue there, Venkat.
Perfect segue, Venkat. Well done.
Well, we're segueing out to other Italians, which is Gonzaga, who tips off now. So thanks.
All right.
Thanks, you guys.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
All right, go Zags.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great to see you all.
Thanks, everybody.
Wonderful evening, everybody.
Yeah.
Thanks, y'all. Good night.
Yeah.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Thanks, everyone.
Good night.